This is a common question we get asked during coaching, career coaching specifically. Often something I run into pretty often with my friends and family, particularly with their kids. The people that have been working for a couple decades already learned their lesson, but it's that question of should you tell other people your salary? And yeah, there's times when you can, maybe should, and there's other times when you should just keep your mouth shut. And I'll get into some of those scenarios so you don't have to find out the hard way. I found out the hard way. One of the first big jobs I had in the tech world, I was brought in because the people in house is at one of the largest automotive companies in the world. Um, their department, they weren't getting it done, so they brought me in to solve a problem and get it done faster. And I'm 19, 20 years old. Obviously, you don't know nothing at that age. Looking back, you realize how much you don't know. But, I came in and I solved their problem. And for a project that was behind, I actually got them ahead of schedule by months. Towards the end of that, someone asked me, what are they paying you? And being the, green, dumb kid on the block who just kind of came off the streets not too long ago because I didn't go to college. Yeah, I told them what I was getting paid. And most of the department never talked to me again. I finished my contract up and I left. And one guy I kept in touch with. He was thankful because I made his life fairly easy. But man, I talk about flipping a light switch. These people went from having lunch with me in the cafeteria to giving me dirty looks over something I had no control over. Right? I don't. I came in as a consultant contractor. They called me the people that hired me called me a cyber cowboy. You come in and you work your magic and you go on to the next deal. I mean, that's exactly they said that to me. But then I realized like, wow, these people weren't happy. And from that point on, I realized, I grew up on the streets a little bit. Came from a family that, neither of my parents made it through, past the eighth grade. I hung out on the streets a lot, and I just kind of had to figure my way out through life. And I should have looked back and said, the streets tell you to keep your mouth shut. Don't reveal your cards, and don't tell anybody anything that only benefits them and doesn't benefit you. And that's what I think you make the determination on whether or not you tell somebody your salary. Um, at the end of the day, if telling them can only hurt you and not benefit you, then you just keep your mouth shut. And I should have known that. But again, I think I was proud because I was making good money and you just want to tell somebody. And I realized at that point, I'm going to keep my cards close, just like the streets taught me, and I'm never going to say anything again. Now, there are times in some of these larger companies that it looks like sharing salaries have exposed imbalances. And I think that's one of the good things that you find out when the information's like a little more public. That way, the companies can't, screw people over in that sense. Um, and that's where sharing your salary can be a good thing. Or companies will say they'll have a job title buckets like a buyer one makes between 60 and 65,000 and a buyer two makes between 65 and 70,000. That way you look at somebody and you know they're a buyer two and you roughly know what they're making. So there are times when I think there's imbalances going on, and we've seen this, in the last 10, 20 years start to come more into the light that the sharing of salaries have actually, exposed some of those things and, help companies make things a little more fair. So that's the good side of it. Um, the major downfall is, and I've had friends do this. I've had a family member do this. Had a really good friend do this. It almost made a bad mistake, but they would go tell someone their salary, and then the other person would tell them their salary, and they would find out that their coworkers making more than them. And I don't care who you are on this planet, nobody can. It's like nobody can handle that. We get immature so fast and so insecure so fast if we know someone else is making more than us. It's this weird competition, and then all of a sudden you don't like that person. Kind of like what happened to me. Or you go running back to your boss and you get mad at them saying, hey, I'm underpaid. This is where you got to step back and say, how do you know you're underpaid? if you're doing your job all day, how do you know what value your coworker brings to the table? And the person who knows what you're worth at the end of the day is usually your manager and or the people that are signing your checks if they're involved into the day-to-day business. But it says we don't care. We just think that we're smarter, better, quicker, faster, and just everything than everybody else. And at the end of the day, people are different. They bring different behavioral traits, different personality traits, and different education and experience. Nobody's the same. But we can't accept that. If anyone's making $1 more than us, we wanna get mad, we wanna get upset, then you just leave a job. And that's I had to talk a friend off a ledge on that one before. And I'm like, look, man, it's two things are going on here. One, for whatever reason, you just think you're better than that person, and maybe you are, or maybe you're not. But you can't really make that determination because this person doesn't report to you, and you're busy doing your job all day. So how the hell do you know what that person does? Maybe this person does a whole bunch of work after work for the manager. Maybe they're in early. Maybe they never get a customer complaint. Maybe they always do perfect work. Maybe they never have to be asked twice. You don't know that because they're not your responsibility. And they're like, oh, I know, it's just that it's upsetting. I'm like, why is it upsetting? It's if you're equal in terms of like everything you bring to the table, and I mean everything, then that pay gap should be closer at some point, or maybe the stars just haven't aligned and you got to go somewhere else. But when you realize how jealous people are, this is where I say it's like, man, I don't want to share my salary. Like, if people are haters, then all of a sudden they don't want to work with you, or if you're making more of them, they might start trying to sabotage you, or they might start talking behind your back. They want to set you up for failure. Like the same things that you see go on with your family, with your friends, and your social circles, at school. All this stuff that goes on outside of work goes on at work. All the politics, all the undermining, all the backstabbing. And this is where you're almost better off just holding your cards close. Those other instances, there are cases where sharing salaries does, expose some things that needed to get exposed. But on the flip side of it, when you look at how jealous the average person is this going to help you for your career? I had another buddy, he's making $250,000 a year. $250,000 a year. And then he found out that the sales VP was making more than him. And this guy's brand new. And he like blew a lid. And I think at some point, the CEO of that company told my buddy, he's like, look, if you want to go do that guy's job and you can do what he does, I'll pay you his salary. And then the conversation got quiet really quick. And it's just one of those things like stop worrying about everyone else and what they're doing and what they're making and focus on your job. Go crush your job. And it's like, yeah, that person makes more money. It's not that. It's fairly common to find salespeople that make a lot more money than other people in the company. But people can't handle that. And then it's like, well, go do that job and I'll pay you that money. So these are all the things you need to think about, is just how jealous people are, that maybe they are, maybe someone is making more than you is better than you. Or maybe they put themselves in a position to just get more money up front. Maybe they showed more promise. Maybe they worked for bigger companies. Maybe they went to a better school. Maybe they just put themselves in a better position to get a higher starting salary. But here's what I've seen in the recruiting industry. Usually over the course of a year or maybe two, those tend to balance out. Not for everybody. It's one of those things that you might have to go back to the table and say, hey, I've done very well, but this is where I need to be, or this is where I would like to be, or how do I get there? So before you go around spouting off on your salary, just keep in mind that if you're making more than other people, you might get to the point where when they find out that they're going to start undermining you, they're going to start talking trash, they're going to set you up for failure. It's just one of those things that this is the ugly world we live in. And you can say that that's wrong, but it doesn't stop the fact that it happens. It's just one of those things and then you start comparing yourself because you just think you're better than somebody else sometimes, and you think I deserve more than them, even though you have no idea whether or not you are. It's not even better. Wrong choice of words here. It's about value to the company and to your manager and to the team. Somebody that is overly negative is not as valuable as someone that is positive and uplifts other people around them. Someone that is not reliable is not as worth as much as somebody that is reliable and dependable. Those people that get their work done and raise their hand and ask for more, they're more valuable. And you got to sit back and say, what is valuable to my manager? What is valuable to the company? And then compare yourself against the person you're going up against and say, well, who brings more to the table? We're so caught up on stuff sometimes. It's like, well, I went to this school, I deserve X. I'm like, that's not true. I have X amount of years of experience, I deserve X. Well, that's not true either. I know people that went to great schools that have 10 years of experience and they're terrible. They're terrible. It's like we all have those people in our lives as friends and family. It's one of those things that you literally got to do a SWOT analysis of yourself and the other person and be objective about it. And then if you see a delta, then maybe that's something you go talk to your manager about. But at the end of the day, the only person that probably really knows, who's worth what is the manager or the person writing the checks if they're in your day-to-day life. So keep all that in mind. I know a lot of times like we want to go hunting and we want to look for these like discrepancies in salary and just keep in mind not everyone brings exactly the same thing to the table. And are you consistent? Maybe you guys did the same amount of work last week, but will that be the same way for the next 3 months, for example? I have quite a few friends in sales. I don't know how many times, especially in the tech sales. It's one of those things where you spend, 9 months chasing big deals, and then you hit one big deal, and then it's like, well, I'm up, and then the other. You got to step back, be rational, and be objective. So, but I also say at the end of the day, what I learned on the streets, what I learned at my first big job was I had nothing to gain by telling them that what I made, because even at the end of the day, they were mad that I was making more, but I was only brought in because they couldn't get the job done. But that's how the world works. So, anyways, that's one of those questions that gets asked pretty often, and trying to give you both sides and when you could think about sharing your salary or not sharing your salary, and you don't always want to get your advice from a LinkedIn post. So I wouldn't call this advice. It's just an insight, anyways, based on my own experience. But we do coaching, resume writing. You can look on the left there. We do all this fun stuff to help you get your career boosted up and get moving. We try to help our customers win. That is the goal. So if you're trying to get somewhere, give us a call. Until then, I'm going to catch you on the next one.